So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this.
Hi there, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Let's get down to business. Welcome to the Contingent Workforce 2021 Trends and Opportunities. I want to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. The content for the webinar will be roughly about 40 minutes. We do have everyone on mute. We do have cameras off for our attendees. However, if we are encouraging questions throughout the webinar, so please feel free to submit those on the chat feature located in the Zoom control panel on your screen. Also, we're going to be recording this and we'll share with you after in case there are some good tidbits that you want to take away. Feel free to just absorb, pay attention, no worries about taking notes because we'll send this to you after the webinar. So let's get into it. Welcome. IES would like to thank you for joining us today as we discuss some of what we think are the top trends and priorities within the contingent workforce space in 2021. As a brief introduction about IES, we're also known as Innovative Employee Solutions, and we have been in the contingent workforce space for coming up on 47 years, specializing in employer of record payrolling and independent contractor compliance services. We've seen many changes within the industry in that time and are looking forward to our discussion with you all today. Our presenters today are Sara Hertzog, President of IES. IES is a family-owned business, and Sara is third generation Hertzog to lead and grow the company. Myself, Sara Jensen, I've been with IES for almost 10 years now and specialize in working with enterprise-sized companies to leverage direct sourcing, compliance, and international capabilities into contingent workforce programs. And then last but certainly not least, we have Antonio Barraza. He's on our client solutions team and is on the front lines every day and hearing what the market needs are in the contingent workforce space, both from our clients and companies across a variety of industries. Here's a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start with a brief recap of 2020 and what we learned during a really unique and challenging year. Really looking forward to what's coming in 2021 and 4 trends and opportunities that IES believes are at the forefront for the contingent workforce. A recap and share some takeaways that you can bring back to your teams for consideration. And then, as I mentioned, we'll do a Q&A session at the end again, but please feel free to send a chat via or a question via the chat feature. We really want to make sure that this is a dialogue throughout and as interactive as a webinar can be. So submit your questions. We'll pepper them in through the presentation, and any that we don't get to, we'll address at the end. So I'd like to start with some key learnings of 2020. And let's be honest, 2020 was a crazy year. So if 2020 was a slide, this would be it. I'm not sure if any of you can relate to this picture, but I know I had quite a few moments this past year in 2020 that I felt just like this kid going down this slide. We had a global pandemic in the coronavirus. Many, if not all of us, have experienced at least some periods of time in quarantine, which not only required adjustments personally, but businesses also had to quickly react to the needs for quarantine. With the uncertainty that the pandemic caused, in addition to the quarantine, we saw massive amounts of layoffs and furloughs. In the first few months of the pandemic, 870,000 US workers lost their jobs. And then, of course, this affected businesses greatly. According to SHRM COVID-19 research on small business closures, 42% of small businesses shuttered, hitting, of course, certain industries harder than others. So with all of this, companies really had to respond quickly to the unprecedented situation that we were all in. Those that did so successfully, of course, albeit not without their own challenges, incorporated some elements of the following. First being agility. Many companies had to pivot really quickly to having a majority or all of their workforce working from home in a short amount of time. And being able to be agile in creating or expanding on remote work processes was a necessity. Additionally, many companies had to be agile in adjusting their service or product to meet the market demands as well. For example, Airbnb expanded its experiences. They originally launched experiences in 2016, but in April of 2020, they expanded that service line to become online experiences, recognizing the need and opportunity to still be able to participate in unique experiences virtually while the world was on quarantine or social distancing. I know many of you have seen this in the last year. A lot of companies had to completely pivot their business model. There are many examples of companies in the manufacturing space that started focusing all their energy on making personal protective equipment, such as masks, face shields, hand sanitizers, ventilators, etc. So what this agility also required was flexibility. Flexibility with having workers whose spouse perhaps was also working from home, kids who were doing virtual school with no childcare, and really balancing the blurred lines between work life and personal life. And collaboration was key to make all of this work, especially when the workforce was fragmented and working remotely. So while messaging apps and video conferencing tools have been used for years, 2020 saw the needs and use for apps such as these, such as Zoom, Teams, and Slack skyrocket, not only to get work done, but to also keep teams connected and employees engaged. Finally, for companies that could allow remote work, as I've already mentioned, this meant the workforce being remote and working from home. So while this has shifted throughout 2020 with some economies reopening and then again closing again, what this allowed was for many companies to have a better understanding of both the limits and the successes of how remote work would be for their specific business. So I'd love to put all that behind us and look forward to the trends of 2021. And before we really get into that, I'd love to find out what your priorities are for 2021. So I'm going to launch a poll. Give me 1 minute. Okay. So I'd love to hear, what are the top priorities for your business in 2021? We've provided a few options for you to choose from. We also have an other. If you choose to go with other, we'd love to have you input into the chat feature. And I'd like to ask, I'll go through what the results are in a minute. We'll give you a little bit more time. But then, Antonio, if you can help share what some of the other priorities are that people submitted. So I'll give you maybe about another 5 seconds. Okay, I think, let's see, no, still moving. We got a lot of people interested in this. Okay, I think we're about good. I'm gonna close the poll, share the results. So overwhelmingly, the priorities for this year are to grow or maintain the business. The other top two, keep my workforce healthy and improve employee engagement. And we'll certainly touch on some of these during the webinar today. We don't have the time to touch on all of them, but certainly some of those will be highlighted in the topics that we have. Antonio, if you can unmute yourself and share some other priorities that people might have provided.
Actually, we didn't have anything pop up in the chat here, so it looks like our poll question was pretty close to where our themes are right now.
Great. Okay, thanks.
I see one here. We see researching popular remote work niches where companies are hiring now before normal economy comes back. That's definitely going to be something that comes up. The whole idea is we're going to try to contextualize this around the contingent space, but of course it's going to bleed into your FTEs as well. This is, I think, our first trend.
Great. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing on that. So that leads right into our first trend, and Antonio is going to take it away.
So that chat was sort of setting me up for this slide. I promise we didn't work in tandem, but thank you. The first trend, and this is, I don't think going to be a surprise to anybody, but we will inevitably for sure, thanks Ryan, we'll see more utilization of contingent workers. We're going to see the increase that started in 2020 really continue to be leveraged all the way through 2021. I doubt this is going to be a big surprise to anybody, but dealing with the response to COVID, We had a huge, massive layoff. Sara mentioned the first few months, 870,000. I believe at the end of April, it was up to 2.1 million. We saw a huge amount of unemployment happen. Companies, like we were talking about, had to not just pivot their offerings, but how can they meet even the current need that they're offering? So nearly 1/3 of companies have hired contingent workers to replace full-time workers. This is a trend that it was a Gartner research study in Q4 that is going to continue to increase. As you can imagine, it is proven to be an effective tool to help meet the immediate needs of a global pandemic that we're in. And it's going to be the tool that we continue to use on our way out. Prior to this reality that we're living in now, I know it feels as temporary as we want it to be, and I think that's our emotional response. We want to feel like this is temporary, but it's changing our perceptions, and those changes are not going to go anyway. Prior to 2020, when we needed to make decisions based off of immediate needs, we'll just use remote work as an example. When we thought of contingent workers, or previously they were called temps, we call them contingent workers now. They were largely undervalued. We assumed they were low skilled, low wage, quickly replaceable. Immediately I think of, a line warehouse worker, somebody that you can engage for 2 weeks, let them go, and then the next time there's a big shipment, you'll grab them for another 2 weeks. They were used for inconsequential tasks versus strategic initiatives. Well, 2020 told us we have a tool that we haven't really been using the right way, and now we can leverage it. And this will be the tool we use throughout 2021. New perception, we have proof. What is that saying? The proof is in the pudding. 2020 was our pudding. We have proof that these positions, these contingent workers, are highly skilled. They can be specialists in a specific area. They're used to working independently. They're used to moving on a dime. They are choosing to work in this kind of, we'll call them a professional contingent worker. They're seeking out this level of independence. They want to be effective for you so they can be utilized again. We have proof that we use these types of workers to support companies to survive, and now we will use it to help companies thrive through and past a global pandemic. So looking back, I know we're not going to spend too much time looking back, but if we've done all the work necessary, now we get a chance to create with intent. We had to make decisions of, let's use the remote work example again. We had to create these sort of disconnected teams, send them all home as quickly as possible. I don't know if any of your companies were like our company, but we had to move in about a 24-hour window. And I think a lot of us did, right? Hands up, a lot of us did. But we didn't get a chance to wrap controls around this. We had to just meet the need, keep our workers healthy and safe, keep our clients' needs met, and really keep our doors open. Now we can pause and put some controls around this. Your contingent team is going to require continual focus and care. So first one, these are the takeaways. Again, this is why we'll send you the slides at the end, but it's very important that you proactively shape the culture of your contingent team. These are not loosely engaged workers. They're workers that potentially can be, you could be creating a talent pool that will want to work for your company again, and hopefully you'll get what you need out of them and will want to engage them multiple times. So wrap yourself around their culture. There's a lot of ideas and some concerns around, bringing them too far into your fold or into the company culture there. It's totally understandable. Give them their own unit, give them their own community, connect them to each other, connect them to their leaders, and give them that sense of identity while they're doing this contingent work for you. Next, and I'd like to throw into chat here as well. Hopefully Ryan's got some new answers for me. Leverage remote technology. This is probably something I don't even need to stop and show examples of. We're using technology out of necessity to host team meetings, to do presentations for clients. But what creative tools, and this is hopefully you guys will have some good ideas, because I'd like some good ideas. What kind of creative tools or ideas are you doing to leverage this remote technology to connect your teams? While Ryan and some other people are going to give me answers in chat, one of the things we did that has turned out to be just so much more fun than I think anybody realized, we started hosting, we call it water cooler chat. And really, there's no host, there's no moderator, there's no point. It's a 15-minute window where there's going to be a Zoom room open, and you can come have a cup of coffee with your coworkers. It's not kind of like we used to do in the break room. It's an interesting way to leverage technology that we're using all the time. Yes, I love these, the virtual happy hours. Thank you for that. That's something we think about sometimes. Well, do I want to connect with people after work? Do they want to have time with me? They do. People are living on their own island right now. Slacks, donuts. Yes, I love it. Same as the water cooler. Share your donuts. We had one of my peers, we had a meeting and we decided, I used to bring in bagels on Fridays. We decided to go get ourselves a bagel before our meeting. And we spent about 10 minutes having that bagel and really strategizing. Gamification platform. I have a client right now that's in the process of buying their contingent workers. What just slipped my mind? It's a Nintendo. Switch. Anybody know the Switch? Yes, they're going to buy them the portable handheld switches and then host these games. They're going to check them out just like they did a laptop. Eating pizza on camera feels strange. You're right, Herb. It really does. It feels a little invasive. But again, these are just creative ways to use technology we have to use all the time. This is how our teams get work done now. But what creative ways can we do to not just connect them for business, but to make sure that we're still building that culture together? We'll get those answers out to everybody at the end too. And then next, we're going to be working on the recruitment process. Redefine your recruitment process. And I wish that there could be a little bubble that pops up that's saying, and keep redefining and reinvesting and questioning. Are we asking the right things? Are we getting the right people engaged for this type of contract work? This is a trend that, remote work affecting the global workforce has been a trend that will not dissipate. It's time to start asking those questions. How comfortable are you working independently and on a team? How comfortable are you hosting presentations in Zoom? Talk to me about a time you had to creatively connect with a client using technology. These things are becoming more important to our recruitment process. So redefine it now, continue to revisit and redefine as you continue to build these contingent teams. And this is going to seem, I think everybody in the room either said, yes, I know, or rolled their eyes a little bit at this. HR team. We've been talking about this for 5 to 10 years? Your HR team, this includes procurement, this includes talent acquisition. These are crucial members to your strategic team. Using that example of the remote work aspect of a contingent team, let me just say this with a lot of intensity, don't go do this without your HR team. You're going to step on some landmines, and really things that you could have prevented is the state that you're going to be engaging this worker in. Do they require you pay for, let's say, a cell phone or internet? What is their reasonable accommodation for that? Visit with your HR team before you start to push out these initiatives. They're going to help you really get the right level of controls around it so that your efforts can be back on finding the right talent to build your contingent teams.
And Antonio, I'd love to add, in addition to procurement and talent acquisition, if you do already have a contingent workforce program, your program management team.
Absolutely.
Really have a pulse on the inner workings of the program as well as the relationships with the vendors, so that
absolutely
decisions and the partnerships can be levied for the vendor partners as well.
That's an interesting point there. The program managers over your contingent workforce. So within your large company, there's this contingent group. There's somebody overseeing that. That person is going to have perspective on what other opportunities your company has to add teams to their contingent workforce. They're going to have line side on if there's maybe a need in your sales team or your IT team or your customer service team. They'll have an idea of where this idea can be leveraged. So yes, bring them into not just when it's time to fill their team, but when it's time to be strategic about bringing this workforce further into your workforce.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Antonio. Well, it's been how many months of us working remote, doing conversations, meetings, webinars on Zoom. I still talk with my hands. So if the background fades in and out, it's just something I can't get rid of. So I apologize ahead of time. But what I wanted to continue the conversation on from what Antonio was talking about with partnering with your HR team, your program manager teams, et cetera, is really another hot topic is work design. And work design has sort of been turned up on its head in 2020, and I think will continue for 2021. Wanted to share this survey that we have from Deloitte about really what's important to workers for making remote work sustainable. And you can see the number one trend here is digital collaboration. And Antonio did talk a little bit about that already, but you have, your Slack, your Microsoft Teams, your Zoom, etc., as some of your mainstays. It's what we use personally quite a bit as well. But they have tons of them out there. Google collaboration tools, and there are just tons that come up. And what's fun about them is that some of them are pretty industry focused. So you can have, something very specific for your industry that you can put your contingent workers on, put your program managers on, put your, vendor partners on, et cetera, so that you have, a larger collaboration tool. We did that with a pretty large client, and it's worked great. We have a Slack channel for all of our contingent workers, for ourselves, for the MSP program managers are on it, and then the program managers at the client are on it too. And it just really streamlines that communication. It gets people quick answers, and it also puts a common question out there for everybody. It's a good communication tool for us because we're able to get open enrollment benefit communications out, or for California, sexual harassment training things out. So it just does a lot to streamlining your communication together within your programs, with your workers, et cetera. Another sort of niche things that I have found that we haven't personally used yet, but I'm going to be looking into, is there's another messaging and project management tool called Nifty that looked fun. Then one for me that I'm particularly interested in our office, our conference room has one huge wall, and it's all a whiteboard. Herb, I see you're on today. You've been in that room quite a few times, helping us develop software, and we just do mind mapping all over it. It's something I've really missed through this, and they have a collaboration tool specific to that called MindMeister, and it is just for that particular purpose. Not just whiteboarding, but also mind mapping exercises. So there's things out there, they can help you. The second, you flip screens there, Sarah.
Okay.
The second one is for your flexibility and your worker well-being. So in the previous slide, you'll see that worker flexibility was a close second. What was last on that chart was for worker well-being. But I think that I wanted to follow up with this slide to show how important it actually is in a worker's mind. And I think that that's a really valuable point to hone in on, that, as a senior executive, when you see that's ranked number 8 here, but yet it's number 3 for a worker, you need to find somewhere in the middle. And executives are juggling so much right now. And, with growing your business being number 1 priority from this poll earlier, that's always top of mind. How do you do this? How can I keep growing, especially in an economy like this one where it's touch and go, quite honestly. Keeping your workers' well-being at the forefront of that, it does. It's one strategy to help you grow your business, because it creates more loyalty. It creates more trust with those employees when you are concerned with their well-being, providing them tools to be proactive about that, as well as providing the flexibility that they need for well-being or just for their day-to-day. I mean, my entire staff overnight either became, homeschool teachers, partly, or dog walkers, or Amazon package recipients. So you have to let them be a homeschool teacher for a minute, and then also then be your employee for a minute. And it does stretch out the day, and it can make things tougher, but you still might be getting that 8+ hours in that 10-hour time frame, but you have to give them that flexibility to do that, and only to promote their well-being in there. One thing that does sometimes, come to mind about the flexibility and working from home quite a bit is the wage and hour laws. I mean, they're different in every state, some easier than others. Here in California, they can be complicated. And so you as your team continues to work from home and juggle homeschooling, dog walking, etc., there are tools in place that can help you do this and manage that more effectively. I mean, everyone has a time and attendance software out there, but I saw some rankings for two tools that we're going to be looking into soon. And they are specifically for remote work. And one is called Time Doctor and another one called Hive Desk. Again, I don't know a whole lot about them at this point, but they had really good rankings on how they accommodate time tracking, project work, to really just check in on your employee to make sure that they have what they need, but then also that they are doing the work that they say that they're doing. But some of that also comes with, what do your vendor partners offer for both time tracking, but also well-being? And that can be an EAP. A lot of companies offer EAPs to their employees. So the vendor partners you're working with, do they have that? If they do, how often are they communicating that resource out to these workers? Is it, once a year? Is it quarterly, et cetera? And work with them on how often or how frequent you think that that's necessary for them. There's more out there now, and that's slowly jumping into the market for just one step above an EAP for wellness for workers. And, partner with your vendor partners to see what's out there, partner with your broker to see what's out there for your own internal staff. There are a couple things I wanted to mention that, we're looking into for open enrollment. And one, I don't know if you've seen commercials for it, but there's Talkspace. And that's an online app for video chat for therapy. And now they've turned it into a corporate niche as well, where you can pay a monthly subscription and offer this to your employees. And so that it gives them instantly therapy or chat therapy if that's what they need. Another one that is looking to compete within the EAP space is ginger.io. And it's like an EAP, but said to have quicker response times. Again, because it's an app, so it's not a phone number you're calling. It's an app that they can go in, they can look at all the resources available to them. They can have therapy more almost like the chat video version of it in Talkspace, et cetera, so that their claim is that it's a faster response time than your typical EAP. And then another one that caught my interest, again, there's so many of them out there, but is that app called Calm. Maybe some of you have used it. I've used it. They do sleep stories. Sometimes when your head just spins, you need something to kind of lull you to sleep. And so that's another one, again, called Calm. They do meditation, and you can have a corporate subscription to it. So it's not going to work for everybody, but there are options out there. And I just encourage everyone to sort of get creative on what they can do for worker well-being, because things like making it easier to collaborate, making it easier to have that flexible day, prioritizing well-being, in the end, it's all to retain that talent, whether they're full-time employees, whether they're contingent. Once, the economy stabilizes a little bit, it is going to be really easy for workers, especially remote, to apply for other jobs. They can interview over a video camera now, and you'll never know. And it's not like the old days where one day they showed up to the office in a suit and you wondered what was going on. So I encourage everybody to really think about especially the contingent workers, because they are now an essential part of the workforce to get your everyday jobs done. And so thinking through how you can partner with the suppliers that you use to provide, a good space, good culture, all the things that we've talked about is going to be really important. All right, so this poll question is going to be a little bit of a sneak peek into one of my points. But Sarah, if you go ahead and launch the poll, I'd like to know that since the pandemic, has your company expanded the geographic locations you are hiring within? Simple yes or no. If no, please go ahead and give any feedback or comments you like in the chat box. To hear any words of wisdom or thoughts behind that. Sarah, I'll let you go ahead and do the countdown.
Okay, yeah, we're going to give it a little bit more time. There's still some movement, maybe another 5 to 8 seconds. Okay, I think we've stabilized a bit.
And not hiring, as a couple of people have said in the chat, I totally understand that too. It's a really tough economy. And 50-50.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Great. Okay. Well, Sarah, if you'll go to the next page, there we go. The necessity, I stole this from Sara, actually, this line, but the necessity of 2020 is an opportunity for 2021. I really feel this way. If you can go to the first bullet, Sara, in my opinion, the remote or hybrid approach to work is here to stay. We were always predominantly in the office type of culture. And although we had made some big strides and some departments had a day or two or a person or two that would work from home a couple days a week, we still had a large part of our workforce that came into the office every day. And March 18th, I remember the day, all of a sudden it was, well, you're no longer coming to the office. And so once we got beyond the scrambling, beyond, just making sure that we were able to do our jobs every day, people really settled in and people were very happy, especially, from a commute standpoint. There was some of our employees, although mileage wise don't live that far, but there's traffic here and it would take an hour each way. They're very happy to not have that. We took a survey about 3 months ago of our internal staff that did include some contingent workers in there as well. And 80% of the staff had hands down said, I only want to go back to a hybrid office. And I was a little bit surprised by that because it's just not what we've done previously, but they love the flexibility. They feel like we have enough, good collaboration tools and I have some managers telling me that they feel more connected to their teams now than they did back in the office because they have daily Teams check-ins or it's just so easy to instant message, or I see some of my staff more through video because they just push a button and here I am instead of walking 10 feet down the hall, which sounds crazy, but it's true. And I think that a lot of people are thinking this. When I opened up LinkedIn this morning, one of the very first headlines I saw was a news article that went out that said, would you rather quit than go back to an office? I don't want that for my staff. So I'm assuming you guys, feel the same way. Sara, if you could go to the next. So what I would really encourage, if possible, I know not all jobs can afford to not be in an office, on an assembly line, wherever the case may be. But if you can consider it for your workforce or part of your workforce, consider being location agnostic. Find the talent that you need versus finding the location of that talent. So we were always hiring in San Diego, and now we have many employees that have moved for one reason or another. I can't say pre-pandemic that we would have kept them because it just wasn't one of our mindsets. I am so thankful in some ways that we did just sort of get that kick to do this quicker because now we were able to retain that talent. And we're set up nationwide, so there really wasn't a reason why we couldn't have before. It just wasn't part of the culture. And now a third of our employees work outside of San Diego in just 10 short months. Now, it's really helped. And the other piece to that is not only has that helped us retain good talent now when we have had some openings, and they've mainly been for contingent workers, we've opened it up nationwide. And we have been able to get a really strong skill set that has been harder to hire for here in San Diego. And they've been across the country, and it's been great. And then last but certainly not least is, if you can, consider opening up your search globally. There is just amazing talent all across the world. And we've had some clients that have had to go global out of necessity because of business travel restrictions. And with this, I don't know that they'll go back. It was, they always had the workers come from another country into the United States, get the visas, et cetera, so that they could do a project on site with somebody. Now you're still able to retain that talent, again, through all the collaboration tools, et cetera, but stay in their home country, be with their families, especially during a global pandemic, not have the cost of traveling for the employer or the cost of the visas for the employer. And it's worked out really well. And I don't mean to replace all the face-to-face time, because there is a lot that that goes with that, and you need that. But there can be a middle ground where you do most of your work from your home country. You come to the US, or people from the US travel somewhere else to still do some of that collaboration in person. Now, I think you'll find a lot of businesses moving this way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kara. The final trend and opportunity that we want to highlight is diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion has been a priority for many companies for years. So this specific topic is not necessarily new. However, historically, it's been really focused on full-time employees. And to Antonio's point earlier, contingent workers aren't just serving as fill-ins until employers can find a permanent solution. Many have long-term relationships with the companies that engage them. And these non-traditional workers increasingly contribute to the organizational strategy and fulfill those critical business objectives. And from what we've seen pre-pandemic, contingent workers in some cases make up to 40% of the workforce. And post-pandemic, as Antonio has talked about earlier, we're anticipating that to increase. So including this large portion of your workforce in your objectives and your reporting within your D&I program, it really provides a more comprehensive view into your current program and allow you to see how you're measuring up against your objectives in a more holistic way. And then, of course, additionally, the need to consider the contingent workforce as part of your future plans for D&I. So what are the goals that you're working towards? And how are you going to get there if you don't incorporate, potentially up to 40% of your workforce in those plans? Review of your current goals and objectives allows you to drill down to see which are really appropriate to expand to your contingent workers and perhaps which are not. Additionally, it's also really important to share your company's goals and objectives with your vendor partners in your contingent workforce program and have a conversation with them on how they can help partner with you on these objectives as it relates to the workers that they're sourcing, that they're legally employing, etc. And then finally, this should not necessarily be a surprise. I think we've all seen studies that have shown a positive correlation between workplace diversity and benefits like increased financial performance, higher employee engagement, and higher levels of innovation. And typically, discussions around workforce diversity typically are focused on ethnic and gender diversity, which as well they should be. Expanding the focus to also include different types of workers, including freelancers, contractors, and other non-traditional employees. They will also provide diverse ways of thinking, experiences, backgrounds, potentially even geographic locations that will help to bring that diverse way of thinking to your company. And the impact of this is especially transformative when it comes to recruitment, because a diverse workforce really lends itself as an attractive employer brand that appeals to today's market, today's top talent. And with today's top talent really coming in multiple forms, full-time employees and contingent, the need for including your contingent workers in your D&I goals and programs, we feel is a significant opportunity in 2021.
I couldn't agree more. Although I have to admit I did hear that slide before, but I still was very excited to hear that. D&I, it's like gaining the widest level of perspective possible, so I can see as many opportunities in front of me as possible. So yeah, appreciate that. So to throw in the summaries and takeaways here, like we said, we have more utilization of contingent workers. My little tag here that I added is contingent workers can be used in new ways for strategic and business for critical work. So I really want to challenge you to be creative. it can be pretty much anybody within your company, right? So now as long as you're defining it and putting it in the right context, getting in front of it, get creative with what kind of contingent workers you're using. Focus on work design. Continued focus on well-being, which was a lens we just snapped right into place as soon as COVID hit. All of a sudden, the well-being of our workers was number one, so it's possible. Continued focus on well-being and flexibility will be a necessity to retain top talent. Location agnostic employment. Incorporate national and or international hiring into your workforce to find the best worker for the job. This is, we have a piece coming out about engaging without borders. There are no borders in your way anymore. Diversity and inclusion. Trend is to include both FTEs and contingent workers in your D&I reporting metrics and to extend D&I initiatives to your contingent workforce. With it being up to 40% of your workforce now, if you're not doing this, you're missing so many opportunities.
Great, thank you, Antonio. Now we'd love to open it up to questions. Please feel free to submit any in chat. We had a couple that came in while we were talking. First one, what types of positions are you seeing trend in the global space? For me, I can help provide an answer and then we'll open it up to you and Antonio and Kara. A lot of what we have seen have been on the software and development side. Additionally, a lot of design work. And we have a handful of clients that are in the broadcast space. So now that there's large events that are being held virtually, surprisingly, we're seeing a lot of broadcast positions that are coming up on the global space. Whether it's because the workers are moving to a different country or they now don't need to Kara's point earlier, fly them into the US where they were typically housing the events in person. So that's what I've been seeing quite a bit. Antonio or Kara, do you have anything else to add on that?
One that I've seen come through quite a bit lately too are translation services, translating different RFPs, because work really has gone global. And there's so many contracts, proposals, et cetera, that need to be both in English and, whatever the other language is. So that's been really interesting.
I've seen the similar trend to Sarah, the software. It's so interchangeable, the idea of a software developer. It's, they're not just building something for Microsoft. Like this is building platforms that are being utilized in ways that we didn't have the need for in the past. One of the things that has come up this last year is this new way of hosting conferences. It's the software behind creating a world of avatars. I mean, those are developers that are being engaged all over the world. So yeah, that's one of the main ones. There's also been a small influx I've seen of local sales people, which I was a little surprised by that. We've usually seen it the other way around, an international company wanting to hire a salesperson in the US, but I've seen it in the inverse now as well.
Great, thanks, Antonio. Let's see, there's another question. If the job requires you to be in an office, how can you ensure you're still giving flexibility? Any thoughts on that, Antonio or Kara?
Well, it goes to Kara's point earlier. Controls, or the controls we put around things now, we just have proof now that those can be redefined. We can re-identify where those controls are. The idea, actually, I had a piece that came out right at the beginning of COVID that was talking about health initiatives, like well-being initiatives, creating access to a gym, to trainers, to yoga classes. Well, the idea behind that was if you're going to offer something to your workers, you have to create a flexible way for them to utilize it. Otherwise, it's just something on paper. If there's a trainer at 8 o'clock in the gym every morning, but the worker doesn't have flexibility to change their hours to get that, why are you wasting the money creating this kind of initiative? So if you don't allow your worker to own their day and create flexibility around their day, they won't be able to benefit from all you're creating for them in that workforce. So if you're going to have an 8 to 5 job, maybe you need it to be from the hour 7 to 6. And now that worker can create their schedule within that, of course, reporting to their supervisor. You can have controls, but they might need to look a little bit different.
Great.
Perfect, Antonio.
I learned from the best.
Let's see, one final question that came in. what are the first steps a company should take when a current employee wants to move out of state?
We've actually had, a lot of that come up lately. We've had a lot of our clients or new prospects come to us because, like we've experienced, their employees wanted to move into another state where they're not registered and continue working for that company. And the companies have said, yeah, we want to keep you. Let's see what we can do. And I don't mean this as a plug to IES, but there are companies out there like ours that can help you do that very quickly, that are registered in all 50 states. And so you can put those employees on somebody else's payroll so that they have a continuation in employment. And it doesn't have to be forever. If you want to do this as a stopgap until you then register in your own state, because it does take some time, you can do that. Or if it's working well, then you can leave them with that employer of record. There are a lot of companies that can fairly closely align your benefit offerings to what they were used to getting when they were in your state. So sometimes it's just as seamless, and it can be done almost, very, very quickly, which is a great thing, and a lot less headache.
There was one final one that came in. What is an example of incorporating contingent workers in your diversity and inclusion goals? I think a simple one is, if you're looking at aligning your contingent workers with your full-time employees in terms of diversity and inclusion, an initial thing that you can do is look at how you're promoting diversity and inclusion in your sourcing efforts. So are your direct sourcing teams and your staffing partners in your program, are they communicating the same values and initiatives in their recruiting and interview processes as you are when you're sourcing for full-time employees? And does the day-to-day reality of working at your company really reflect those values that you're promoting in your recruitment? So I think kind of looking at that as an initial step is a good example as a starting point. Those are all the questions that have come in. Thank you for attending. As I mentioned, this has been recorded and we'll share this with you after. We'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to reach out to us at the general information at the bottom, or if you have any specific questions for myself, Kara, or Antonio, our emails are listed here as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and let's get going on 2021. Let's get down to business.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.